A very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for dialing in for this webinar session. My name is Adam Baso. I'm the Assistant Director of the Professional Practices and Community from the IHRP, which is in short for the Institute of Human Resource Professionals. Welcome all to this Driving HR Transformation Through Workforce Experience Design webinar. Today, we are very pleased to partner Sriram Iyer and his team at HRTech.sg and the folks over at Singapore Polytechnic to host David Gozarto from Leapgen, whom shall serve as our moderator, where he shall then take you through this webinar proceedings. Before I pass the session to David, let me now run through the basic housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded and will be available for download within 1 week of this session. And if you have questions that you'd like to ask, please submit them via the Q&A functionality at the bottom of the Zoom window. If your question is for a specific panelist, please share the question in the following format. Specify the name of the panelist and followed by the question. In order to minimize disruptions, participants' video and microphones are disabled. We understand that we may not be able to address all questions, but we will follow up and strive to respond after this webinar. If you notice, the chat function has been enabled. This is to allow the participants' interactions. However, if you have any question, please do use the Q&A function. Please refrain from taking any screenshots of the presentations or slides shared by the speakers, as the materials are copyrighted. We will send them across to the attendees in a follow-up email for your reference. Do note that these materials should not be on-forwarded or redistributed to non-attendees. We seek your kind understanding on this. You may write to us at community@ihrp.sg to seek permission to use the materials from the respective speakers. Right, with that out of the way, I am now very pleased to introduce and hand this over to David. David is the APAC MD of Leapgen. He's one of the APAC leading authority on human resource, talent, and technology. He has deep expertise in Australia and global HR technology space. David is highly sought after for advice and coaching by enterprises on HR technology solutions. With that, I now pass this over to David. David, please.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much for the layup indeed, as I bring a slide deck up myself, which is a deft, which ideally you'll all be seeing now. It's great to be here with this fantastic group. Can you all see a wonderful extra bit of information about me on the screen now?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic. It's great to be here. Delighted to have the opportunity to support another IHRP event. Thanks to you, Adam, to Karina Kwok, to Sriram and the HRTech.sg team, and also the great people behind me here at Leapgen to help us put this together, and the panelists who I'll introduce in a moment. Now, again, we'd love you to be interactive in the session today. That's a little bit about me. I'd love you in the chat box to just answer one of those questions that I've got up there. So do you want to talk about something you wish you were better at? Saying no, that's probably why I'm here at 6 p.m. Sydney time on a Friday night doing a webinar, but that's to your advantage, I hope. Grab something and put it into the presentation. I'm just organizing my screen again here. My apologies. The chat box has just disappeared on me. I'd love to see what you're talking about. So I'm David Gazarot. It's my lovely family there. The rest of it you got from Adam, or you will find with LinkedIn. And I encourage you, if you haven't already, feel free to follow me or connect me on LinkedIn. That's by way of introduction. So let's get moving. First of all, let me just lay up who I am, not I should also share a little bit about Leapgen. We are a boutique management consultancy supporting digital transformation for HR. We are focused on helping clients to execute their visions, to make great decisions about their technology investments, to help them embed that technology and drive the workforce experience through that. So grateful to have the opportunity to chair the event today. We are all about helping you to design for change and bringing consulting capability to that. We also have capability, and you'll see some of that today, that you can tap into, and we love working with clients who want to take this on themselves, and we love helping and coaching them to do that also. So in terms of how we engage today, I've got a raised hand. Let me just try and work this screen back out again. If you do wish to jump in, really want to encourage you to do that in the chat. We've got the panelists here and myself and the team all in there as well. We will have room at the back end to work through questions in a more structured fashion. So this is going to take the form of, I would like to think this is more of a masterclass. Most of you are here as part of your membership at IHRP, and this is a great opportunity to explore, get some insights, and get the perspective from the local experts on the panel here as well. So please feel free to share your thoughts. We all grow together when we do that. In terms of learning goals, I'd love you to walk away today with an appreciation for why experience matters and why it matters more than ever in 2021. I'm going to take you through a view into Leapgen's approach to workforce experience design. And I hope that helps give you some tools and some insights and some instruction on how to take that back and work that into what you're doing within your organizations today. So I'm hoping for that. And then the real examples from our expert panel here of local experts. They're in the trenches with you guys, and they are living and breathing this stuff. And so I'm really looking forward to tapping into their expertise. And that brings me to introducing our wonderful panel. And I will ask each of you just to introduce yourselves, starting with Sasha.
Hi. Hopefully you can hear me okay, David.
Yep, beautiful.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Sasha. I am the MD and Employee Experience Lead at Workflow.
Fantastic. Welcome. And Anish.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone. Hi, this is Anish. I head the talent practice at Uncharted, and my focus is how do we identify, develop, and grow our next generation of leaders. Thank you.
Brilliant, Anish. And it's great to have you bringing a practitioner and a view from putting this stuff into practice at Standard Chartered. And that's great. Asnan, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and nice to be here. I'm from Singapore's first polytechnic, Singapore Polytechnic, at the User Experience Center, where I'm currently leading the work in both consulting as well as capability development, especially in human-centered design. Nice to be here and joining all of you today.
Fantastic, and really looking forward to that great perspective that you bring from the work you're doing there, Asnan. And finally, but not the least, Chaitanya from Darwin Box.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Chaitanya. I'm one of the co-founders, also had the product for Darwin Box. It's a end-to-end technology a platform to manage end-to-end employee lifecycle for enterprises. Before Darwin Box, worked with Ernst & Young as a HR consultant.
Fantastic, and again, really great to have that perspective, not just from your experience, but also always great to see what's happening with solution providers and how they're bringing innovation to the technology piece that enables the experiences that we'll be working through today. So thanks again for taking the time to join us. Well, with that great expert panel, I'm going to throw out to you, the audience, first up with a quick question. So all I want you to do is in that chat box, you're all using it, great. Just give me one word to describe 2021. I'm here in Sydney right now in week 5 of a lockdown that none of us expected. The world is sort of tipped upside down again. I've got all sorts of things happening on the home front around it. I thought that was 2020. challenging, uncertainty. It sucks. Yeah, it sucks. And I think there's words that I can think of that are not appropriate for this public forum. But anyway, isolating, anxiety, wonderful transformation. Chaitanya, you're on screen. What's a word from you? Oh, you're on mute.
It's uncertainty, definitely. I think that is what defines 2021 for me.
It's been like that. So we're still in the mix of it. We haven't come out the other side of this disruptive world. Unpredictable. Yeah. There's a silver lining. Good to see the positivity there, as well. Sasha, you're on mute is the phrase of the pandemic. Thank you. And I just used it, and I will use it a lot tonight. Les Pickett, great to have you here. We worked together many moons ago in the Coles Myer days. And it is exciting to be here. And I know the focus on Asia Pacific and seeing where we're at as well. So look, the world in 2021 kind of feels a bit like 2021 on steroids, really. We've got a sputtering recovery where we're seeing all sorts of impacts in the world of work, not the least of which is we're seeing a lot of folks thinking seriously about shifting and changing jobs right now. There's some pent-up demand. They talk about it being the great resignation. At the same time, we've got some workers who are really struggling, particularly in essential work as well. And I'm sure that it plays out differently across this audience. I know we've got a largely Singapore audience here, but certainly if we think about what's happening in Indonesia at the moment, we look at the Philippines, it's very different where we've been. And I think unsettling, words like adapting are where we're at today. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page with that. The other thing that we're seeing, and we're all probably experiencing yet again, is the new work model is hybrid. Now, the data is shifting all the time on this, but as it stands, around 1 in 5 organisations are already locked and loaded on a hybrid workforce. So they've made decisions, they've changed policy, they've supported ways of work effectively around that. By the end of the year, we believe it's going to be closer to 93%. Now, that will be made up of organisations that take a deliberate approach and design for a new world of work. It will also include organisations that they'll be forced to. In response to the Great Resignation, you may be forced into making decisions about supporting hybrid where you might not have otherwise have done so. So again, we'll launch a poll quickly because I do want to just get a quick sense from you through a poll as to, with a view to hybrid working, what are you seeing as the top challenges? And we've given you 4 to choose from. I probably could have put other, but let's have a look at what you think on that one. Sasha, what do you think this is going to land at before we put it up? Which one do you think will?
Oh, I mean, this is slightly tainted by my own view, but I think blurring the line between work and life. I like to say I'm living at work rather than working from home. Yep.
I think that's a really really good, a common experience, really, as it is. Blurred lines. Okay, have we published that out, or am I still the only one seeing what's going on here? Brilliant. Thank you for your responses. And Sasha, you were right. It is overwhelmingly about the blurred gap between personal life and work life. And I think that is a very big feature. And what that says is humanity's never been more important. The things that are happening in the blurring of our work and personal life is making a big impact on us. And that is now meaning that workforce experience has never mattered more than it does today. So that's really what lays it up for us to be really focused on this concept of workforce experience and how do we design for that, because getting it right matters. I mentioned that number, and there's varying research at the moment across different parts of the globe, but they're all in and around the same ballpark. Around that 40% of the global workforce is considering leaving their employer. I'm sure there's plenty of employers who want to leave their employees as well. Now, that's easy maths. I think the average is about 20% turnover across the board per year. Now, if everyone put the seatbelt on last year and kind of said, I'm in a secure job, I'm not going to do anything, we've kind of got 2 years worth of pent up normal kind of turnover, plus everything else that's going on. On top of that, people are also planning some major pivots. People are thinking about changing tack on their careers, moving from, urban to country living, if they can. All sorts of changes and pivots going on. So again, in the chat, keen for you, if we think about experience being redefined somewhat, give me a word or two or a phrase that you think defines experience. And you won't be tested on this, but it'd just be great to get your sentiments on it as well. So jump in and start whacking those up as well in terms of how you define experience. Now, immersive, that's a great start. Thank you, Nailin. Excellent. And emotion-packed lives, thanks, says none. Experience is about how someone feels. I love that. And that's a really important one as well. Now, Sriram Swetcher, the spotlight doesn't seem to be on me. I don't think when I'm talking, the camera's coming on. That might be something you might want to look at, or I need to do. I don't know. But we're going to keep going on. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. I think we're all in a pretty similar boat here. It's about the moments of truth. It's about feelings. We're seeing a lot about how we feel and how our emotions are. And that's a really good bit of insight because when we look at experience, and this is I've been in the HR domain for close to 30 years. And I remember as an early, and Les, if you're still out there, I think you were one of the people that used to help me with this stuff. But it was always about the hands, the hearts, and the heads. And we felt if we could connect people on all 3 points, we were going to be able to, get the best out of them. And that fundamental building block hasn't shifted, but how we've kind of tapped that and how we create a connection between those is actually the definition of experience. Because if you think about the hands work, it's really about transactional. It's really about the transactions and how we kind of get stuff done and the outcomes that we seek. When we add interaction to that and we bring the heads and we start to explore the heart piece, we're generating feelings. And that then starts the combination of the two, achieving outcomes, the transactional piece around that, laced with the interactions that we have around that, create an experience. And I want you to take that little equation away because I think it's very helpful in terms of understanding and defining experience. I can't see myself on screen. I don't know whether you're seeing me. We're going to plow on. It won't matter too much. No one wants to see me at this time of day anyway. So when we think about experience, thanks, Prachi and Sasha. That's good to know. We at Leapgen are now really thinking a lot about this whole concept of whole person. And so when we think about the responses to hybrid and the fact that we're converging our personal and work lives so much, we have been privy to the whole person more than ever. And actually, it's given us an opportunity to see the whole person, start to design around them. So when we think whole person, we don't just think about the physical, which is often what we've done to support people at work. It's been about the work environment. It's been about helping them and enabling them, giving them infrastructure. It's been about supporting them at an emotional level, right? About helping them to. Thanks, Kimberly. You've thrown me off with that, but I appreciate it. Emotional, how do I feel about the work that I do? Does it make me feel happy? And we know happy employees tend to be better performing, better connected, better ambassadors for what we do. Social, the term social and business or corporate would not have been seen together except for the annual Colesmeyer Christmas party once a year back in the day. But social now represents a lot more for us, and it's really, really a quintessential part of who we are and how we connect and how we build that. The spiritual, again, it's not about religion, but it's about having that sense of purpose, that sense of connectedness, feeling at one with what I do and how it's applied in the context of the employer or the worker, the company or the organization I work for. Intellectual is the last one, or intellectua, as I prefer. Again, that is about, am I going to achieve growth? Am I going to learn? Am I going to be able to develop myself, which is something that's really quintessential. Now, all of those elements are quintessential to humans at any level. And so we really need to be focused on a whole person view to address the experience. Now, the other frame I just want to give you is this one around journeys versus moments. Now, I saw moments that matter be used to describe experience earlier on. Moments that matter have been really important in HR, and we've done a lot of work with particularly HR business partnering and centres of excellence to support elements of or aspects of the moments that matter for people. But where we're going to now is experience and journeys are about connecting those moments that matter and framing those up in a context that connects and defines more than just those single points. Single moments were more about the transactions, and we've done great work to support those. But when we add the broader journey that they undertake, be it onboarding, be it a career journey, that's how we start to define an experience, and we create a feeling and more connectedness around it. So if we think about sample moments like these, then actually being all components of, in this case, an onboarding journey. So a journey, when you see the word journey, think about it being the sum of moments, right? The moments that matter. And our job as designers is to map those journeys, identify what's great, what's not so great, and ultimately design a journey that contains only those moments that really add value. So if you want to take friction out, look at the moments that don't really matter and see if we can't take those away. Okay. Yeah, great statement too, Asnan. Appreciating all of the commentary that's going on in the chat box. So then, if we think about the journeys, understanding the whole person through the use of personas just helps us then to define and chart specific journeys against those personas across that more generic journey. In this example here, you're seeing an onboarding example. So why that's important is that we really need to look at the needs and wants and expectations of people based on their unique characteristics. So someone in this example, early in their career, is probably looking to chart moments that matter that are slightly different, right? That are about those defining moments for them in the early stage, as against a more experienced hire who might have, it's not the first time they've been given a company laptop. So that's not as impactful for them, but other things may well be. So then we bring that together by balancing the needs of the workforce and understanding that if we just design for one persona and that comes at the cost of someone else, then that is not going to create an exceptional experience. We're going to leave parts of our workforce behind. Now, what we did a lot when we brought technology to a lot of HR into the moments that matter, what we were doing quite often was designing that from the perspective of the HR team and what we thought and what we think would benefit our people. One of the big things I want you to take away today is we have to be thinking about everyone's perspectives and being able to couch those effectively. And I'm going to give you some tooling in a moment to help you to do that. Right. Take a breath. Going well. Now I'm just going to step you through a 4-stage process that we use. It's informed by design thinking, and I'm sure many of you on this call will know of the concept and the methodology around design thinking. So that's not proprietary to Leapgen. None of this really is. I'm just giving you our take on how we are defining and working, particularly in the workforce context. Because what's really important is, and I've just shown you through those journeys and the moments that matter, that workforce experience is very different from customer experience or consumer experience or user experience. So the other thing the other takeaway I'd like you to be thinking is that workforce or employee experience is not user experience. And you can't just use the tooling that you have in your customer experience team and expect it to be able to deliver what you need to design great experiences for the workforce. You'll get pretty good outcomes from that, and I do encourage you to keep doing that if that's how you're leveraging it. But there are some elements that you need to do to take that a bit deeper. Now, in our methodology, we define 3 stages. One is a learn stage, the next an innovate stage, and then we have a deliver. Now, in a standard design thinking model, you wouldn't have deliver, because usually what the outputs of design thinking do are to feed into an execution or a business as usual or a product related team. In the context of the work we do designing digital experiences for the workforce, we use the learn piece to empathize and define. So we're looking at getting in the shoes, developing insights that inform where people are at today. We use that then as the basis for ideating and innovating. So brainstorming, thinking about solutions, prototyping those, getting those ready, but then importantly, making sure that we plan for deploying technology, creating a program of initiatives to support that and roll out effectively. And that's the deliver piece, and that we measure it and we do it in a manner that is a continuous loop. So this is not about projects, it's about programs. We should be doing this in a continuous improvement kind of circle. I'll unpack these stages now, and then I'm going to get help from the panel to bring this to life. So when we work with our clients through a structured approach to designing, we start with initiating. And this initiation piece is about thinking about what's going to help set you up for success. It's about framing up what we're looking at, why, and how that's important. So what tends to come out of that is something like this. And this is an example from a client we're working with at the moment around a vision map. Now, if we can align mindsets and get people on board as to the purpose and what we're trying to achieve, and we articulate that clearly in a well put together vision statement, we define the strategy and we use the blueprint an equation for success that Leapgen has, which is a combination of mindset, people, process, and the technology. Falling out of that comes your guiding principles. And then also what we want to encapsulate are measures that we can look at how we're doing, or how we'll know we'll be successful. Now, the little gem that I've added to this piece was a consultant from our US team who developed, in working with this particular client, this checklist. And I think this is a really great tool, because what it does is it has you using the outputs of the vision, connecting that with the design work that you do. So as we are thinking about how to solve this, we want to make sure we're staying within those guiding principles, and we've got those next to us, that we are thinking about the outcomes as well in designing. When we configure the software, we should be looking at how that configuration is being done to enable, or in line with these guiding principles, and to enable us to deliver those outcomes. So with a great vision and a great strategy, then we get into the first stage, which is learning. And this is where you get the building blocks of the understanding. To do this, we need to capture the voice of the workforce. We need to understand and prioritize the moments that matter, identify and collect those in a way that we can visually represent them to show where we're at and what the opportunities are. Those outputs look a bit like these examples. So here's an example of a persona. You've probably seen personas. I hope so. If not, ta-da! This is about being able to encapsulate a common frame around a group of like people in your organization or workers in your ecosystem, and to personalize it in a way that gives us insights, helps us to understand, the memorable moments are there, the drivers, the things that are motivating them. And also, we're starting to get a sense of sentiment. What's frustrating them? What do they need? What's their view of how we're doing? So this is really valuable. And when we collect it, analyze it, and present it this way, it's immensely helpful and powerful to what we're trying to do in designing for the future. Another really important thing that this, to me, really distinguishes workforce experience design from its cousins in customer experience and user experience, the crosswalk, sorry. So with personas, we know that there are individual needs based on where a particular group of people might be at, or what's their frame of reference. Could be demographic, could be it could be geographic. We're doing work with a global client now. We know there's differences between what's happening in Europe and what's needed in Asia, and we need to accommodate that. But we want to still understand what the group needs are, because where we can address commonality, that is where we're going to be able to really streamline and bring high value. We have to ensure that we can meet the shared needs across different persona groups, but also individual needs as well. So that's another layer. I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because to me it is a very key distinguisher. And I know Sasha, who works very closely, and we collaborate a bit in the space. I'm sure she's itching to unpack some of this with us as well, so shortly. And then this is an example of a current state journey map. So again, we're trying to map here what's happening today and how people are thinking and feeling against those activities across. This example is an onboarding one, which is quite a common one we get asked to work with naturally. So what we're trying to do here is to, from the perspective of that persona, we're taking a walk in their shoes, we're understanding the activity that they're undertaking, what they're feeling about that, and how we can encapsulate some of that to help us with some of the ideation. Opportunities, blue skying, some of that stuff coming out as well is all very helpful in that first learn stage. So what we're trying to do in that learn stage, we're trying to bring our own beginner mindset. So I have to take my hat off, my expert hat off, and stop thinking about solutions. My job is to act as if I know nothing and just ask questions to elicit where they're at in terms of their current state. That allows us then to start to bring our expertise and to bring our ideation to it. So the next stage of Innovate is about collective brainstorming. We want to bring the right people together to identify solutions that will improve the experience. We want to coach and guide the organisation. So we want to be able to create meaningful solutions that are measurable, and that checklist is a great tool to help with that. We want innovation to be brought to it. I mentioned earlier, I love it when vendors and solution providers are prepared to come and be involved in some of this ideation at this point. This is the time to go and engage with the likes of Chaitanya and solution providers like Darwinbox, because they bring the solutions they have, and they can help to inform some of those ideas at this stage of the journey. This is the sort of output you get. So you find a more evolved view of a journey, and this is a different view on a journey map. That is really about looking at how we can tweak, where we can intersect technology, and what it's doing to the touch points, how it's affecting people's thinking and their experience attributes. And at the bottom, you've got to start thinking about change. So this is not done in isolation. Experience design is the best tool you have to effectively manage change. So as we start the ideation process, we want to already start to look at what are we doing that's changing the current state, and how does that align to the success measures we have. So that first one at the bottom there, by putting an easier search tool in, and that one stop for managers, that's creating efficiencies, which is one of our success measures. So, there's a lot of power in visualizing in that way. The other view is around architecture. So let's look at it from an experience architecture rather than a systems architecture, but we're laying up where the systems interact and where the humans interact. What's important here is to understand high touch digital, where the technology can solve for it, and where high touch humans are still really valuable. And a well-designed architecture around workforce experience will be thinking about both. Lastly, in the Leapgen approach, this is where the rubber hits the road. And so as we kind of, as the outputs of that innovate phase, we now need to look at how we put that into action. So this is about planning and prioritizing initiatives. It's developing roadmaps so we can intentionally sequence the initiatives that we have to deliver those outcomes. We want to define success. We're probably going to be doing some business casing here on some of these solutions. So the better we have done to show how value will be created by how it addresses the future state and defined from the workforce experience view, that's going to help us to get the investment that we need and to support the resources we might need to achieve the outcomes. Effective change, I'll harp on with it. Change starts from the very first stage of this. If this is about transformation, it's about change. If it's not about changing what you do today, it's not a transformation, it's a transition. It's going from one system to another. And happy to debate that one in another forum. But it's really important that we are thinking about changing what's being done. Outcomes from this deliver phase, I mean, a couple of quick examples. This is a matrix that we often use to try and show what prioritization can fall out around initiatives. So if you want to get big impact in a hurry, you go to the quick wins on the top left-hand side. And that's really informative. And quite often when we're working with clients, we find things fall out that are quick wins that can be done without needing to buy new tech or engage expensive consultants or however, and that enables you to start to get the runs on the board to get the support for the major projects. Roadmap. This is a view. We have many flavors of roadmaps that we use, and I'm sure you yourself would have this, but this is about the intentional sequencing and how those projects intersect and how we can get to the outcomes on that journey to workforce experience. So thank you for being attentive to that and for all the wonderful comments that are coming through. That is what I wanted to share with you in terms of our approach. I do hope it's giving you a lot to think about. I want you to take action. You can take action right now, as I'm sure you're doing. And that's simply by saying, how does this, what have I just gotten out of this that I can apply right now to what I'm doing? And I'm sure there's things in there. In the coming days, think about how you might be able to influence others to start thinking this way. And then next week, let us know if you need help. And I'm sure any of the panelists here would be happy to engage further to help unpack this more and help you set up for success. So with that, I'm going to reintroduce our fabulous panel. So welcome back. I hope that was a nice whistle-stop tour through a lot of stuff that we see and we do. I think that's the fastest I've ever rattled through that. So it's good that we've now got some great time now. So we're going to spend some time with our panelists. Again, if you've got questions, and we'll collect those and we'll have a structured forum towards the back end. But we would like to see you engage as well. So hey, Sasha, I've got you on screen where I am now, so I'm going to ask you to take your microphone off, your mute off. I'd love it if you could start us. So we've just sort of looked at, I guess a tour through how we go about doing this and how we do it effectively. What's your perspective on what organisations should consider before embarking on a journey around workforce experience design?
Sure. So I think one of the things I see quite a lot when I talk to people about experience design and, how do people get started, is that it's very easy for people to see journey mapping and personas and jump straight in. I get it. It's quite exciting. It's new. It's pretty new for a lot of HR people. Design thinking is a really exciting concept. But I think before diving into the creation of content and assets, it's kind of taking a step back and thinking about why employee experience is a really important part of your organization. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. And I kind of want to be a bit practical today rather than high level. The first thing which I think talks to your kind of initiate phase, David, quite nicely is that principles piece. So, we talk a lot about having a strategy for everything, and I'm not diminishing the value of that, but I think employee experience design principles are a really great way of making sure that you're extending employee experience across whatever you're doing in HR, not just your EX projects. So, creating those design principles doesn't have to be a laborious task. It could be something that you do in a kind of digital workshop, or if you are able to get together, working for an hour or two with your team, with key stakeholders within your HR function to say, okay, what is it that we want to try and create here with our employee experience, and start to tease out those kind of 4 or 5 design principles that you want to take forward, iterate, maybe get some feedback on, and then really hold those true across what you're doing. So I think principles is one thing. The other point is do a bit of listening. So rather than kind of saying, which I see a lot, let's start with onboarding or let's start with return to work, go out and do a focus group or some kind of survey, or maybe a blend of both if you've got the time, to really see where your organization's at. So pick the experience that is going to have the most impact. But if it's your first employee experience voyage, maybe pick the one that's kind of lowest risk or less, that's got less of an implication on technology, or, something you can do as a pilot, right? But you want to be taking quite a scientific approach to selecting what that experience is, rather than just guessing that everybody in the organization cares about onboarding, for example. So definitely get out there, do a bit of listening. And then I think the third and final point on that would be to pilot something. I think, it's so easy for us to get caught up in, well, I need my strategy, my principles, and my design thinking framework before I can do anything. No, these things are relatively easy for you to kind of kick off and get started. And of course, David, what you've run us through is really, really deep diving into that experience transformation. But if this is your first foray into the space, just pick something that is going to drive the most impact, and something that you can show as a proof of concept, right? So if you're worried about selling employee experience internally or getting stakeholders bought in, just show the value through something, as I say, relatively low risk, something that has been shared by the organization as a priority, and then I think you're going to be good to go.
Excellent. That really sound advice. I think you're right. One of the things with this, if you are focused on experience and you just have a crack at something, you're probably going to make something better. Like, I don't think if you've got that mindset. So I think your points around, making sure you are thinking from the right perspective and just have a go at something, it's not a flick of the switch either, right? And Anish, it's probably good to feed you into this, because you're out there leading these sorts of initiatives, time of great change, as we said. So what advice do you have for HR teams who are embarking on this journey? And are there any examples you have to lean on to help us?
Sure, David. I think before I kind of go in there, I guess what I want to iterate, what you highlighted, is beginner's mindset. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the core. And I was just reflecting on it. I'm a coach, and I was thinking, talking about beginner's mindset, you're talking about curiosity, you're talking about not being judgmental, you're talking about iterative. Wow. Yeah. So I think those are some of the key philosophies and principles behind employee experience, I would say. Yeah. So before we really go into the tool and frameworks and methodology, which is very important, I think it gives a good structure. We really need to be understanding what's the philosophy, what are we trying to do here. I think, as Sasha said, why we are doing this. Yeah, I think that's also important. And I think the way I have looked at it is it's all about empathy. Yeah, and keeping the client or user at the center of this. And in this context is actually the employees and workforce. Yeah. And if we really start doing that, we actually see very different outcomes. Just to share an example, I guess, we've been talking about this, hybrid working, and, the big debate and discussion around that. And when we start looking at it within the bank, what we realize is it's not only about home versus office. I think there are multiple dimensions. And I think that all of those inputs actually came when we actually started speaking to employees in focus groups and surveys. So we started thinking about, okay, what does flexibility mean to people? Yeah. What does team performance, how does team performance come into play? How does team norms and overall setting comes into play? And if you ask me, initially when we started, these were not some of the key themes. And that's what I have seen as you start using the methodologies and the philosophy, you actually start creating a holistic solution and approach. So with all of our work, I guess, we did a lot of research, with internally through surveys, but I guess, focus groups, really speaking to individuals. And I guess, looking at different personas, someone who is, 55, how does it work for them? Someone who's a, young graduate and they share kind of rooms where they stay. It's a totally different ball game for them, how it's home office is for them. So overall, I think as we start looking at this as a philosophy and actually start empathizing with what are we trying to really do and kind of really think about employees, I think that's what I've seen we've really been winning in many areas.
Brilliant. No, I appreciate the perspective there, and look, I think you're echoing. It's great to see, from in the trenches, you're echoing a lot of what we're saying here. I think we should be not afraid to have a go at this, and I think at the end of the day, like any aspect of what we do, if we put people at the centre, we're probably going to get to the right place with it again. And I hear that sentiment coming through. Asnan, I'm going to dial you in here. Now you're at Singapore Polytechnic Enterprise, and I know you do a lot of work around that intersection of technology and I guess HR teams to define this stuff. And I know I made a comment before pretty vehemently about the distinction between workforce experience design and user experience design, and I know you've done a lot of work at the pointy end of that. So I'm interested in your perspective and your take on how we set ourselves for success and what you're seeing.
I think there was one point that was brought up earlier on about not being afraid and taking the first steps to kind of look at things in the margin and seeing what you can come up from that. In our experience working with organizations, largely the small and medium-sized enterprises, right? And they're always driven by a particular business requirement. So for them to kind of look at what's happening in their own workforce takes a little bit of nudging. And one of the best ways to do that, we find, is to actually get them to reconsider how they can better pivot themselves to actually do more for their existing customers. And while we're doing all of that, customer journey mapping, we're trying to figure out what are the different handoffs between service delivery partners that they have. That's when they realize that there could be some opportunities where the capabilities within the organizations are just not good enough. So recently, we're seeing a lot of organizations, largely in the more technical fields, are looking at how they can be more digitalized in the way that their workforce is kind of like ready to do the work. So when we work with organizations like this, we realize that, look, it's really amazing that you're looking at what's happening within your organization in terms of what you're delivering. But when you're doing that, don't just look at technology for the sake of technology's sake, right? We need to look beyond in terms of where are the capabilities within the organizations themselves. So this is when that customer journey mapping tool that is very, very relatable to a lot of organizations can then be flipped to look at your customers in this case are actually your employees. Because if your workforce is not able to actually do the job well, then what are the things that can be done for it? So for us at Singapore Polytechnic, our core business is really in education. So our specialist is one of the things that we kind of like tell them, look, it's all about bringing up your human capital. The specialist diploma that we have that integrates both data analytics, HRTech, as well as design thinking is a great example to show that these are the things that can actually be done in a very manageable fashion as well. So the idea of fear that was brought up earlier on, I think it's a real concern, and how organizations can approach in embracing that fear can be better supported. So I think there are some winning strategies out there, and there are a lot of organizations that have actually taken the courage to make that leap, and we continue to see this happening, especially over the last 18 months, and it's been phenomenal on that level.
Right. Well, that's really exciting to know. And I guess I'm interested to know, and I think we might unpack this a bit more in a moment. But just where we're at here in certainly Southeast Asia around adoption of these kind of approaches and how effective it's been. So I might just park that for the moment, come back to you and the others on that particular topic. But I do want to bring Chaitanya in here, because as we're thinking about how we do deliver great experiences, the innovation that's coming from our vendor community and how they're addressing those challenges is really important. There's never been, I've been in HRTech now for about 25 years. There's never been better technology to support people at work the HR function than right now, and it's increasing all the time. So excited to have one of the more exciting and innovative solution providers here, Chaitanya and Darwinbox. And I guess interested to know how tech's enabling the employee experience, and from what you guys are seeing, how are you reacting?
Yeah. Thanks, David. Only thing is, I wish I could have gone through your model, much earlier. It would have made my life a lot simpler, because when everyone starts talking about employee experience a few years back, in fact, understanding what is the expectation from the HR fraternity or the market itself was very difficult for technology providers like us. So one thing that is quite interesting is we always rely on CRM systems, what they have done. Very interestingly, they're generally few years ahead of HCM systems. Probably that is because there is immediate revenue associated. So innovation happens very fast. So if you draw parallels to a customer journey in a CRM system, so starting from the minute, okay, you stepped into store or open the website to maybe when you're touching something or making the first purchase, so it's been 3 months since you made the purchase, etc. So the journeys are very clearly curated and defined. So now if you translate that into employee experience, so what comes out is maybe I'll just share screen at this point just to help me with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, if you put employee life cycle into the picture, it actually starts from the first touch point, which is when he probably opened your career website and applied, or exploring or applied to a role, to the all the way it ends, or it goes all the way to even after he left your organization. So it is important you even engage or create an experience for your alumni as well. And there are so many touch points across employee life cycle. So interviewing process, offer management, onboarding, and then during the course of employment, there will be transfers, promotions. First time someone becomes a manager, eventually he may decide to move on. He resigns and he leaves. So there are a lot of touch points across employee life cycle. And realistically, from technology perspective, or even from maybe design curation perspective, you can't go to everyone and create. So what it means is you need to make very granular and meaningful segments within the company. So now what are those segments is very important. So it would come from a hierarchy like, employees, managers, HODs, or HRBPs, or demographic segments, depending on the age, gender, geography, language. Or very interestingly, I think this is something we technology providers, not cracked yet fully, a psychometric profile. So depending, for example, a simple example is what is my management style, and what sort of management style I prefer. So if you have access to an employee psychometric profile, you can curate that experience even better. And then generally, what is his footprint on the system, how engaged he is with your systems, etc. So using all these parameters, you can actually segment, and for every segment, you can curate a journey. So at every touch point in the employee life cycle, it could be something as simple as taking a survey at every touch point, or ensuring they have a better, very good engagement and interviewing experience. So query resolution could be. So here what I want to highlight is you also need to think about tactical stuff. It is not only strategic stuff always. So on day zero, receiving a faulty laptop or not receiving a faulty laptop at all, or maybe waiting so many days for getting as simple as appointment letter or experience letter, or maybe very very long turnaround times for responding to queries, etc. They also actually severely hamper employee experience even more than strategic stuff. So you need to focus on tactical stuff as well, something as simple as easy query management, asset management, document management, etc. So on the top of it, especially, it's even more relevant in hybrid working environment as today. So you need to set very transparent and clear goals at every journey. You should have a very dynamic, a continuous performance management. So now most importantly, what I want to focus on or emphasize is development support and coaching. Say I became a first-time manager. So have you created development journey for me? So what I need to go through? So I moved to a new location. So have you created a learning journey for me where I can be aware of cultural sensitivities? Now, most importantly, can I learn all these things at my own pace, dynamically on mobile? So this is how at every tactical level, strategic level, bringing in all the elements of performance and LMS learning together, you need to curate the experience for different segments, for different touch points of life cycle, and technology obviously should enable it. That is how we see. And most importantly, how are you delivering it? So now it should be in the flow of the work. There should be a conversational AI supporting all these things, and you should flow these things seamlessly into other workplace systems like Slack or a Teams or whatever you are using. You can't be a standalone system, and make it as mobile as possible so that you're keeping the power in the palms of the employee. So that is how we are thinking about the technology. At the end of the day, ROI is the mother metric. So how do you even ensure whatever experience you created and implemented after spending so much money is actually yielding good results? So that is where, again, you need to have different checkpoints. So expected outcomes from all these initiatives. It could be lowering employer attribution, employee engagement going high, your voluntary or regrettable attrition coming down. So basically, say recruitment, maybe offer to joining ratio is increasing. You need to clearly define those metrics and how you measure using the data across life cycle. So bringing in data across the life cycle, that is a bigger pain, or biggest pain that we've seen in the organization. So they have data but scattered around, so non-uniform. So bring together, see it together, and identify how you are doing on how your experience or the investment you made on curating and technologically implementing your experience is giving you positive results or eventually impacting your business.
Fantastic. That's it's really encouraging to get your perspective and to see how, from a technology vendor side, you're thinking through really a similar lens, right? So what you described there is really about journeys and about looking at how the technology can be used to bring some impact there. So great to see, Chaitanya, and thanks for sharing that with us. I'm just going to take a moment now. There's been a few questions coming in, so I thought we might just reach in and grab one of those. And it's from Prachi. One of the major aspects HR teams have been grappling with is performance management framework for hybrid working. What a great question. What are the changes that are required on that? Also, are there any examples where something has been implemented successfully? So I know, Sasha, you've jumped in with an answer in there, which I'd love to bring you in just to talk through in terms of how that's being addressed. It's probably a big challenge for us in these new ways of work right now.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really good question as well. And if you're listening on behalf of your organization, you haven't been thinking about how performance management is being managed in the hybrid working world, then definitely start doing so. I worked on a similar project that was actually tied to a performance management solution implementation for a Japanese client back end of last year. And there are two things that I would say if you're looking at how to adapt your performance management processes and solutions. The first is actually go and ask employees what they're concerned about. And this rule applies to absolutely everything. So whenever I talk to clients and they tell me this is the problem that we have, I will always ask, how do you know that? Like, how do you know for sure that that's the problem that we're trying to solve for? And I know we've been going back and forth in the chat on the same thing. So get out there and ask your employees, like, what are your biggest concerns about performance in the hybrid working world? Engage with your managers, do a focus group if you want to, ask, put a survey out, get the information from your source. And before we decide that actually the biggest issue for hybrid working is technology. Why is it the technology? Are you absolutely sure? So listening is one thing. Second thing is don't overlook the power of manager enablement. So even if you don't have the capacity or budget to change anything about the way that you're managing performance at the moment, look to your managers. I quote Volker Jacobs here from TI People. They did a huge piece of research recently to say that your managers are the biggest drivers of your employee experience. And I totally believe it wholeheartedly. And I think, if you can't do anything with the process, coach your managers. They're likely going to need a little bit of upskilling on how to have those conversations remotely, how to give someone performance feedback in a virtual setting. Don't overlook that. I think that is a really, really important and crucial aspect to transitioning to performance management in the hybrid working world.
Fantastic. Great perspective. It's obvious, Anish, you're in there dealing with this as well. Do you have anything to add to that in terms of, reimagining performance management in this new world of work?
I think Sasha has really made some great points. Yeah. And I think in our context, we are actually transforming the way we manage performance and talent. Yeah. And it started even before all the changes coming in. But the only point I will highlight is I think it's less, I think it can be process issues, because performance management, what people are using was designed 25, 30 years ago. Yeah, that's reality. Yeah, we've moved and shifted so long. The main thing is all about culture. Yeah, which is driven quite a lot by our leaders and managers. How are we being inclusive? How are we looking at really outcomes rather than tasks? Means, is it presence or is it outcome? I think those are interesting ones, if you ask me to really go and understand a bit further, to really see what is the challenge. And of course, then, kind of start looking at what those issues can be. But I guess there are harder aspects, process technology, but I think the softer aspects are equally important, I think I would say. Yeah. And in my work, what I've done, a lot of research actually, around, how do we use managers as culture carriers for the organization? Yeah. And in that context, it was all about what's the psychological safety they're providing? How are they empowering them? How are they motivating them? Yeah. So I would kind of pause there, but I think that's one of the key points in how do we really work with our managers and use EX approaches to really bring some of those things out and challenges and issues what even they are facing. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, I love hearing that perspective as well. And I think there's we're early stage, aren't we, at really understanding how we can positively impact and shift the needle. It's great to hear the sort of work that you're doing. Hey, Asnan, I've got a slightly, I'm going to lean this back towards HR. I've got a great comment from Deb Jani in I want to pick up on, keen to get your perspective on, and that is that employee experience is not only important for employees, but also HR. And I think this is a really important thing, that we're asking a hell of a lot of HR right now, yet it's probably the most important moment in time for HR to do what it is meant to do, or deliver what's meant to do for organizations, right? And I think there's a lot there. At the same time, we're all employees. We're dealing with what's been going on in our worlds and the disruption. It's a crazy time. What are you seeing in terms of the impact on HR itself, and what can we be doing to help HR have a better experience so they can create a better experience for our people, I guess?
I'm gonna follow a little bit of what Sasha's been talking about, and that's really about creating an environment where you can begin to have conversations with HR as well. And so these organizations that we've been working with, in one way or another, there might be some unintentional leaving out of HR in the process of the change and the change management, or even the redesign of the actual experiences for the end customers, right? So I think the idea here now is to bring HR into the conversations early on. When we look at, we've seen so much about the redesigning of work, the redesigning of jobs. And now that we're living in a very phygital world, very hybridized kind of thing. So the way that HR is actually able to kind of like reposition themselves in that particular space is super important. So the use of technology, for example, is one of the ways to make sure that HR continues to be in the loop. This is a personal anecdote. I had some issues with some leave thing, and I was really impressed at how my response from HR through the Skype business platform came back a lot sooner than an email. So I think the idea here is people are increasingly becoming a lot more comfortable with the technology that's available out there. And where HR comes into play is that really being able to identify how and where they can actually play a larger role. So this sense of feeling empowerment, which is really ironic because HR is all about engagement and empowerment, right? But if we don't empower HR in those kinds of spaces, then I think their impact will be minimized. So I think it's really creating that, and continue to create that dialogue and that space. And I think just to speak a little bit more about performance management from a HR perspective, right? I think increasingly, like what Anish had mentioned as well, it's not just about the how, it's about what happens when you actually deliver that particular outcome. So being outcomes driven now is even more important. So I've got a team of 8 designers that currently working at different points of the day, but they're still able to deliver on the work in more effective, efficient manners than I thought they did from before, which is kind of really a nice position to be in. So that's why for me, the last 18 months, as far as COVID has been a great moment of multiple opportunities. So as leaders of an organization, our job is to really identify what they are and then to bring in the right people who are involved in the right spaces. And when it comes to the redesign of work, the redesign of work experiences, HR must be there from ground zero. They cannot be just an add-on.
Fantastic. There's a couple of things I'll just pick up on that. One is, I think in general, what we've seen in the past 18 months is a distinction between, there's been this survive and thrive, and to a degree that's played out in organizations, it's played out within HR teams. The survival part was very reactive, and it was, no one could have foreseen the disruption that occurred, and therefore, we all had to kind of go, whoa, what's just happened to us? How to react to that? And it's a bit of survival. Organizations who were able to, as you just described, kind of embrace the opportunity and see it as a means to perhaps make aspects of what we do better, they're the ones that seem to be coming out thriving, that they're proactive in their response rather than reactive. So I think that's something that I'm seeing. And I do think there's a bit of polarization. I don't think there's a lot of grey in this. I think there are organizations and teams who are just grappling with survival. And look, to some extent, if you're in an industry or in a geography where they're really, the walls have really caved in, obviously that's going to be the context. But I think there's also hope here that if we can sort of see a more optimistic and more hopeful perspective and design for that now, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us in that. I might just throw that quickly back to you, Anish, because am I misreading, and am I an overly rose-coloured glasses person in relation to, how we can redesign so that we can come out of this thriving?
I think there's an interesting statement which was going around last year. Yeah? So we were not in the same boat. We're in the same storm. Yeah, I think as you rightly said, I think it's different industries. It is, like I know someone who used to work with Singapore Airlines. Yeah, so she's a air stewardess, and when I kind of look at her Facebook today, she's been doing secondment with MOH, yeah, Ministry of Health here. Yeah, so it's just an interesting pivot, if you ask me, for her. Yeah, just as a personal example. So I think there are different ways people are trying to survive, but there are also people are like now looking at silver lining and say, okay, how do we really thrive in this? Is this an opportunity for us to actually change the way we work, way we do things? Yeah. So on one side, we're talking about, mass resignations, but I think I read somewhere else which said, okay, I think this is actually now the phase of great flourishing. Yeah. So I think it is quite different in different places, different industries, and different individuals. If we look at UK, I think UK is opening up now with all the rules being relaxed. And in Singapore, I think we've just gone back. Yeah. So I think it is interesting because these things are changing so dynamically. And it is very personal to many people in terms of how they're dealing with it. But I guess, people are grappling with that change because it's happening so fast, I think. That's my observation.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm going to bring you in, Chaitanya. So are you based in India? Because Darwin Box is in headquarters.
Yes.
So obviously it's been a very challenging time, and I know that I don't want to certainly delve too deeply into your own personal experience, but it informs all of us. I'm going to keep it at tech. I read an article recently that quoted Mark Andreessen, who said that technology saved the world through the pandemic. And what he was getting at was I think we surprised on the upside in a lot of ways, that because technology is where it is now, and digital in particular, we were able to continue to, economies were able to still operate in the internet where they wouldn't have done 15, 20 years ago. Socially, we're able to at least be able to connect with family, friends, and others, and that's saved us to a degree. As someone in the world of technology, how do you kind of respond to that? And do you sort of think that's, digital has helped to save the world?
So indeed, David, one silver lining in all this is digital adoption or digital. It got accelerated by probably 10 times. So what would have otherwise taken 4 years or 5 years, it had happened in 1 year. So both from innovation perspective in terms of go-to market for new solutions, as well as adoption perspective for the organization. So whoever had not proactively invested in digital, definitely they got severely impacted, and it didn't take much time for those organizations to realize it is now the time to move on from legacy systems to modern systems and ensure business continuity exists. So so one thing is from technology perspective also, whoever responded well, we thrived. So so be it in terms of ensuring like you said, technology is redesigned so that employee experience is not new, right? I mean, it is always there, but so it is widely talked about and became one of the most important factors in the last 1 year or 2 years because of the pandemic, because of the remote working, etc. So now the true potential of technology, or at least openness to adopt technology to craft digital experiences, it was very well realized and adopted by the organizations. At the same time, it put a very healthy pressure on all of us to quickly innovate and take solutions to the market fast. So as company, we also did that. So we launched a lot of products very, very fast, which would have otherwise taken maybe a couple of years, in 6 months or 7 months.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of business cases. A lot of technology be deployed without business cases through this, which I don't think that'll be forever, but we're proving out pretty quickly that we can launch and adopt technology across not just HR, but we're talking about work tech here as well, right? Just going to flip the switch a little, because I got a great question here from Jorge. It's really around the critical skills and experience for people to lead these sorts of initiatives around employee experience. And I guess we've got a lot of people with an IHRP audience here. I know you're probably thinking, how do I skill up to be able to, be involved or take my career down this sort of path? So I'll start with you, Sasha, because it was directed at you and me, but I have the right to throw it to someone else because I'm the moderator. So what are your thoughts? And I guess you're working with, you collaborate with your own folk at Workflow and certainly with the teams. What are you seeing as those critical skills to lead this?
So I think there's a real mix. So I think there's a huge benefit, especially because employee experience programs largely sit within HR. And I'm not saying that HR should be responsible for employee experience. That's a whole separate panel discussion we could have. But because it does tend to revolve around HR technology implementations to an extent, or it's driven by leaders in HR, I think it's really great if you have an understanding of HR and you can challenge some of the decisions from that place of knowledge. But I don't think that's essential. I think having a good understanding of design thinking as a concept is really key. And there are tons of free resources out there and paid for resources out there if you want to learn how to become a human-centered design thinking practitioner, or just get used to the different design thinking frameworks, right? So David, you've walked us through a fantastic one today. And there are lots of others out there from IDEO and Luma Institute. And, feel free to ping me if you want recommendations on that content. But I think for me, having worked on these projects and having worked with consultants and really amazing HR folk as well, critical thinking is the absolute key to making great employee experience design decisions. So finding those people within your organization that look at a problem and think beyond that problem is really key. So how does this impact this group of people? What is the long-term impact on this? What are we looking to deliver short-term? Having someone that really looks at something and doesn't just take it at face value, I personally think is the absolute key here for an exceptional EX designer.
Great. Asnan, you're in the area of sort of enabling people. I'm sure you've got some things to add in terms of skills.
Definitely, I think it's a worldview expansion. It's a mindset expansion as well that's really required, because you can throw so many toolkits, so many processes at the workforce, right? But the idea here is if you're not able to make those connections as to what you are currently experiencing and what you are learning, then that's not going to happen. So just a little plug-in again. I teach an evening course that does design thinking for HR professionals. And over the 5-6 semesters that I've run this particular module, what really encourages me is when I see HR professionals get really excited as they're actually working on a project that's very close to their heart. And then increasingly what I have seen also is that some of them actually end up getting better jobs out of that experience. And the whole idea here is not because like, okay, great, we've given you a great new specialist diploma for this, but I think what's happening is that they're continuing to develop the way that they see the world that they're in, and then to the point where some of them actually feel that I can do this on my own. I don't need to be in an organization. I can be my own startup, right? So, and I think that wonderful light bulb moment really happens when people really are able to see that, hey, when I start to rethink and start to relearn things, that's when the opportunities become so important for us, so important and so livable. So I think really in whatever program that you are thinking about putting your employees or your colleagues in, if there is no component on that reflective element of the learning process, I'll be very dubious about its capability to deliver something differently for them. So that's my 2 cents with it.
Great, thank you so much. Anything to add to that, Anish? If you're looking to hire, you're continuing to build your empire around experienced designers, what are the sorts of skills and attributes you're looking for?
I think we've covered quite a number of them. I would just say curiosity. I think you just need to be curious to really go understand, dig deep, look at data, speak to people, understand all of that. So I think I'll just, kind of, if I have to say one, I think it's curiosity for me. Yeah.
Beginner's mindset, hey?
Yeah.
Staying with you, I've got a question that came through in relation to, well, it's kind of extension of this. So we've got this great talent. How do we retain it now as when there's big shifts going on? We know we talked at the frame up about the external impacts and that, creating disruption, but also if we're about to embark on, driving more proactively some of these big transformations and big redesigns, how do we ensure we can wrap ourselves around the talent now whilst we continue to evolve for the future?
Sure. I think that there are a couple of questions around, talent retention, engagement, I think even in the chat which came earlier. And I think there are a couple of points to highlight here. I think one, I guess, is, with so much of stuff going on, we really need to continue the focus on talent development. And I'll take an example. We're supposed to run 4 different events in 4 parts of the world last year in May, and we decided, we can't run it now. We can't even travel. But we went ahead and actually did those events virtually, because it was all about really focusing on talent development. I think linked to that is an interesting discussion, which is actually evolving, is around reskilling. So we talked so much about workplace. I think, actually what's being really left out, or very few organizations are thinking, is about, is the nature of the job or work changing, and how will that change in the new context? And what kind of skills do we need? And how do we really transform our own entire workforce? So I guess people are really looking at career development opportunities as some of the big things, which is going to actually help organizations glue and, retain talent, in my view. So that's, I think, one part. I think the second part, I think, is also important. And with so much of reflection going on last year around what's my own purpose, what's my own calling. I think we just saw some of that in the chat as well. Similar aspect actually also depends on organizations. So are we talking about purpose-led organizations? If they have really a very clear purpose, it's all about sustainability, it's about really doing the right things, how are they really actually using that as their employee value proposition, which is actually the next thing around employee experience when they say, So I think those 2 big aspects at the individual level, and at an organization level can really help us, look at development as well as retention, I would say.
Great. Really great insights. Thanks, Anish. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left. I just put in the chat, if you are sitting there with a question you desperately want to get out, now is the time before we run out of time. And thank you to our amazing panelists for the stamina you have and the considerable insight you're bringing. I'm loving the conversation. I hope you are as well. Chaitanya, I'm going to throw another tech-related question your way, and it's really future-oriented. When I think about what the future of work is going to look like, and I made a comment in a podcast last week or so, that this generation, and I've got kids, I'll confess, who are 15, 12 and 10, and I see them as this generation COVID, I tagged them. I think they're going to be the best workforce ever once in 10 or 15 years' time. Everyone on this call, or 300 or 400 or whatever, it's our job to create the world of work to enable them to thrive, by the way. So that's our challenge. When I look at what the future of digital is going to be in our organizations, I look to how my kids are using it right now. And it's quite different to how I do. What's your view of what sorts of technology we're going to be working with around HR as that generation COVID comes in? Is it around the AI? What are you thinking about?
So, one is even before getting into AI level, the way I see organizations will lean more towards, obviously data-driven decision making. While it looks very, very simple, I don't think many organizations have achieved that. So to get there, what you want to become is a composable organization. So what it means is, you have thousands and thousands of systems. So you invested a lot of systems. So if there is one more system, you have all the budget to go and buy. So that is absolutely fine. But, are they talking with each other? So not only at the employee level, but at the systems level, I think composability or collaboration or systems talking to each other is going to be the key. So if I draw parallel to HR, people ask, okay, how in hybrid workplace performance management is going to be. So as for me, eventually there should only be goal setting. There should not be any performance management. So the data should flow seamlessly from all the systems, business systems you are impacting through your goals. And then it should be as objective as possible. Why do we even need a review? So you would have already, be seeing, there would be certain, obviously, development areas and personal goals, etc. But as far as your business impact is concerned, there should not be any performance management. There should only be goal setting and data coming from different systems and you seeing, how you perform. And that is most importantly continuous and real time. What it means is, you can make, you can give feedback, you can make corrections immediately, not after 1 year after that one-on-one conversation happen. So that is how I see. And AI is going to free up a lot of manual bandwidth. So what it means is, it is a very, very good news for HR. We can actually focus on, curating experiences and, integrating with other systems and doing strategic stuff.
Great, thank you for that. Vision for the future. One thing I know is that my kids will decide within 8 seconds whether an app is of value to them, and if it's not, they will hold the screen till it jiggles a bit and never to get it again. So I just hope, Chaitanya, that Darwin box is never an app that expires in 8 seconds, right? That's part of the designing for experience, right? Hey, I feel like we're about to get revved up again, and I am getting the wind up. I'm going to have to bring us to a somewhat abrupt close, but from my personal perspective, I'm so grateful for the generosity of your time, your insights and your perspective. Each of you, so Sasha, thank you so much for your contribution. Anish, love that you are able to bring us into the trenches with you and show us how to make the magic happen. Appreciate it. Asnan, thank you as well for your significant contribution today. I'm going to hand back, and sorry, Chaitanya, I shan't leave you out as well. And thank you so much to all of the participants that gave your time up. Adam, thank you for bringing this to life, and I'll hand back to you to wrap us up today.
Right, thank you there, David. for such an insightful session and moderating the panel discussions. I believe you have done a rather decent job. Also, wonderful applause to our panelists, Shasha, Anis, Aznan, Chaitanya, for spending this afternoon with all of us here through your sharing the pro tips and also the knowledge nuggets for our participants. Not forgetting a shout out again to Sriram Iyer and Sri Cha of HRTech.sg, whom has continually partners IHRP in organizing and delivering this webinar session. Also, gratitude to our supporting partner, Singapore Polytechnic as well. Now, more importantly, I'd like to express my many thanks to all the participants whom had dialed in since 4 p.m. earlier in the afternoon. I hope you have benefited from this session. I'd like to see your final attention to fill up this feedback for the session by scanning the QR code you see on the screen. Your feedback will definitely be useful for our review, and hope to continue organizing subsequent relevant learning events to our audience. Now, that's it for now, folks. I hope to see you again for our future webinar and learning events. Do remember to fill up the feedback form. Once again, thank you all, and cheers for the evening, and have a wonderful and safe weekend. Goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.